Karen uses a credit card scam to get over $2,000 worth of gift cards. She commits serious fraud, and even when she's found out, she keeps pushing. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I work at a 200-ish room boutique hotel in a small, very wealthy town. We do not have a no locals policy. However, our do not rent list is made up of mainly entitled locals who just don't know when to stop. I have a feeling this local coming in today might just be the newest addition to that list. The last time this guest was in, we'll call her Sally, she brought her mother and had a pretty good time. This was just before New Year's. She did pull the Karen card a bit, but nothing too bad. She has a history of making complaints to get things for free. As she was checking out, she inquired about purchasing gift certificates so that she and her mother could partake in a little self-care throughout the year and use the gift cards to pay for everything. A total of $2,400 in gift cards were purchased. In her mind, buying the gift card right then was her way of holding herself to her New Year's resolution of being a giant pain in the butt. Fast forward a couple of days and accounting is emailing asking about the charge because the bank called and said that the owner of the card is claiming fraud. We provided signed receipts. However, Sally managed to still get her money back. She also used the same card to sign up for a fitness membership to our gym. All is not lost for the hotel since it was just the certificates and membership that she used the card for. So I decided to give her a call. When she didn't answer, I left her a message stating that the gift cards came back as fraudulent and were no longer valid. I also mentioned that the membership was also void. However, if she wanted to come in and provide a different card, we would be happy to honor it. At that point, I figured we would never see her again. She never returned my phone call, most likely out of embarrassment, so we just moved on. Now, just after a full moon, she's coming in and my gut is telling me that she's going to try and use those certificates. Maybe she thinks it's been long enough and that we have forgotten. Sorry, Sally, I don't forget a $2,400 chargeback. My plan is to confront her at check-in and play a little dumb. I might say something along the lines of, "Someone tried to purchase fraudulent gift cards in your name. I hope all of that got sorted out for you. What card would you like to use for incidentals?" Hopefully, something like that will keep her from trying. But part of me wishes she would try. I would love to have that conversation with her. Wish me luck. Any suggestions on what to say at check-in are welcomed. One of the suggestions said, "So here's what I'm thinking. Don't just refuse her gift certificates, but also the card. Sorry, that card was used to commit fraud at our hotel. We cannot accept it." The original poster responded to that saying, "I checked. She used a different card to book the room. After the chargeback, I'm sure the bank made her cancel the card." So jumping into the future, there is an update. So I just happened to be at the desk when my dear friend Sally arrived, alone and without the mom this time. I go through all of the steps, I welcome her back and have a polite chat with her while I also go over the details of her stay. All of this is going well and she was being quite pleasant. Now it's time for her to provide a card for incidentals. As she's placing her card into the reader, I take an opportunity to tell her that I know on a roundabout way by saying, "Mrs. Sally, I'm not sure if you recall, but I gave you a call a few months ago in regards to the gift certificates that you purchased during your last stay. The charge was reported to us as fraudulent and we never received funds for those. Unfortunately for you, that means that they are not valid. I never heard back from you, so I'm guessing you were able to sort it out with your bank." She froze. She didn't say anything for a few seconds and then just looked up at me with a puzzled look on her face and says,
"I don't remember that. How strange. I suppose it was handled then."
This is where I hand her ID back and her hand is straight up shaking. I've clearly rattled her and caught her off guard. She checks in and gets settled into her room. I leave the desk to the agents and think to myself, damn, they're not going to be happy. About an hour later, the front office manager comes to talk to me in the back office. She tells me that not too long after I left the desk, Sally returned asking for a manager other than me. She then demands to be told exactly what we know, and the front office manager gave it to her straight and called her a fraud in the nicest way possible. She did not appreciate our honesty. She starts to go on about how she's lived here for yada yada years and is an important member within the community and how dare we, etc., etc. She's a middle school administrator. Then she went on to say that the front office manager was just as worthless as the husband she is divorcing and is here to get away from. The front office manager asked her to calm down or return to her room, and that she would not tolerate her unnecessary outburst here in the lobby. She protested a little bit more when we told her that if she did not calm down and keep a polite tone, then we would call the authorities. She went back into her room. At this point, I'm thinking the tasers might just happen, but perhaps it's over. I packed up and went home to throw back a few whiskeys. A little bit later, I'm told she goes to have dinner at the lobby bar. The front office manager sees her and makes a point to just quickly inform the bartender to not accept any gift cards from her and to send her to the front desk. Sally behaves herself and is enjoying the company of the random stranger next to her for a bit and then decides to call it a night. When she pays for her bill, she does it. She actually tries to pay with a gift card. This bee. She argued a bit because of the inconvenience, but eventually goes back to her room. That's when I get all caught up. We did not ever get to see the gift card ourselves, as she held onto it when the bartender refused it. However, I will follow up with her tomorrow to let her know that she's not welcome back. Jumping into the future, there is one last update. I had the pleasure of going to her room with security this morning to ask her to vacate the room and not come back. She got nasty quick, however, when I told her it was over for her when she tried to pay with a gift card after our discussion. We were willing to let it be after the chargeback, but she just had to push the boundary and we can no longer put up with it. She called me every name in the book as she packed up her stuff. I just stood there and smiled. It felt great. Was I the jerk? When the original poster started talking about that their hotel didn't have a no locals policy, but their do not rent list is made up entirely of locals, I didn't really understand why that would be the case. But after hearing the full story, wow, I don't know what it is about the area specifically that would make locals want to do stuff like this, but it makes me wonder, what did the other locals do that are on this do not rent list that is entirely comprised of locals? Is everyone in this local area just trying to scam this hotel over and over again? And I wonder if the scam with the gift cards would have worked in the bar if the original poster and the front office manager didn't tell the bartender not to accept the gift cards. Was that whole thing only foiled because he was verbally told not to do it, or would they have not worked anyway? It sounds like they would have worked, because if they wouldn't have worked by default, why would she feel the need to tell the bartender? And if that's the case, then that place probably has been successfully scammed many, many times. It's more of a social engineering type of scam over anything else, because it really depends on the people that she's interacting with. When the original poster confronted the Karen specifically requested not to deal with the original poster at the front office or the front desk. She requested somebody else because a lot of the way this whole thing works is based on who she's interacting with. I didn't actually think it was going to go all the way to the point where the original poster and the security guard went to her room to get her removed. I thought they were just going to keep denying her and saying, well, you can't pay for it with that, and then she would have to keep paying with her credit card over and over again. Her new credit card, the one that had to be replaced after this whole gift card thing. I'm sure a lot of you guys have worked in situations like this where you've seen scams go down. Let me know some of your stories down below, or if you have a full-on story, you can submit it to the Am I the Jerk linked at the bottom of the description. But if you were the person working here, how would you have handled this situation? Let me know down below. My new neighbors are really freaking me out. My new neighbors are very strange. We're a pretty tight community, so when they moved in, we had a small party for them with other people on the block so they could get to know everybody. They were incredibly awkward isn't the word. Kind of confused, I guess, by general questions like, so where'd you live before this? Or what line of work are you in? Or even, you want a ham or peanut butter and jelly sandwich? They looked kind of offended, like the questions were totally out of left field or intimately personal, and answered matter-of-factly, not in any way that stimulated conversation, which is why I was not surprised to hear they'd been living in the wilderness, not in a cabin or anything like that. They had just been living outdoors. They have 3 kids, all really thin as rails. Immediate bells and whistles went off for me when they started stuffing themselves at the party like they'd been wandering through a desert, putting away more plates than the adult men. The wife of the family started to loosen up eventually when it became clear the other guests were growing uncomfortable. She apologized for their manner and explained that they'd lived happily in the woods until a relative had called Child Protective Services, who demanded that they have stable indoor home life or they'd lose the kid, who were supposedly being homeschooled but based on the parents' description, I do not know to what degree of reality. So they went from tense undersharing to extreme oversharing in the course of a single conversation. These were the first of a parade of red flags. They own a pretty decent house. I do not have the first idea how they bought it, but they still all sleep outside. You can see them out there just lying there, flat with their eyes shut. No blankets, no pillows, not even a sleeping mat. One of our kind neighbors came and asked if they needed money to buy mattresses, and they basically snapped at her to mind her business. I think the kids' malnourishment was a result of their foraging and hunting for all their own food ineffectively during their woods adventure, rather than any sort of malicious or intentional deprivation, because the parents were pretty gaunt too. I brought over food the first few days, nothing fancy, just some covered dishes, thinking maybe they didn't have the means for transportation to the grocery store yet. Coming from such a secluded setting, I could see if they hadn't anticipated the need for a car in daily use. But it would be a 3-mile walk to get to even a convenience store, and there isn't very accessible public transportation in our immediate area. They ate what we brought and didn't stop the kids from eating it, so I tuned out of the situation. They've since planted a ton of stuff, but not in any way that suggests they might actually know anything about the land. They're just plants scattered all over. Some aren't even seasonally appropriate. That's what got me eyeing the situation again, because how do they manage to live outdoors for any extended period of time if they can't even manage basic gardening? I've been trying to keep a close eye on how their kids are doing. At the same time though, I don't let their kids come to play with mine. If there is something wrong with them, I don't need my grandkids to be the first ones to find out exactly what it is. One neighbor had the kids over right at the beginning and said that all they wanted to do was dig holes in the yard with their hands and that she couldn't get them to stop. To distract them from that, she brought out a snack, bananas, and the kids bit right into it without unpeeling it. She asked them if they'd ever had bananas before, and they said yes. So there's clearly nothing dangerous to the kids at this point. It's just very strange. I don't know what their deal is. I have never seen them leave for work. They do go out sometimes, but not at any consistent times. I've been checking the locks on all my windows every night, and I've taken a pause on letting my grandkids go off in the neighborhood by themselves until I get a better sense of what's going on with these people. Not because I expect something to happen, but because I don't know what to expect. Jumping into the future, there was an update. In my original post, nothing much happened. My new neighbors came from living in the woods without shelter for an indeterminate period of time and are notably socially off. I've never seen them go to work, and they've planted a random array of fruits and vegetables, half of which will never grow in this climate. They sleep in the yard without a blanket or pillows, not in a tent. They just lie down outside. I'm uncomfortable to say the least. So since nothing happened, I remained alert but was no longer alarmed. They did start to march around their property's perimeter in a single file line at all odd hours, but that was it for new developments. I just kept locking my doors and trying not to make eye contact. Fast forward to this morning. My husband and I went away for the weekend, and as our cab was pulling up on the street, the driver was blocked by a police barricade. We explained that we lived on the street and we needed to get home, and it still took us 15 minutes for us to be let through. Their property was surrounded by police cars and officers walking all through it. They're not there. I found the whole thing so disturbing that I wanted to go to a hotel. My husband says that I'm crazy because we just got back from a trip, and what are you gonna do if there's a problem? You'll call the police. Well, they're already here. You don't have anything to concern yourself about. Which I guess is a valid point. I walked over and asked a uniformed officer what had gone on and if we needed to take any precautions, but they wouldn't give any details beyond certifying that it was safe to remain in our house. Fast forwarding into the future, there was an update. Here's what I've learned from a friend in the school system. One of their young kids didn't show up to a class last Friday. This triggered an immediate CPS investigation because having kids in a stable, accredited school is a big part of their custody agreement, and as a result, they were subject to additional oversight. One of the parents said something to the responding authorities that then gave the police cause to search the entire property very thoroughly, and I feel sick thinking about what that could possibly be, especially considering that they haven't seen fit to issue an Amber Alert. Through the general neighborhood gossip alleged originating with a neighbor whose son is a police officer on the case, I hear the family is saying they didn't call the police to report her missing because she has a tendency to run away and she always comes back, that she is a wanderer. That's all I could get from people who even have semi-credible knowledge. My husband's good friend is one of the detectives working on the case and hasn't contradicted anything we've run by him, but obviously could only comment on public information. I'm praying for a good update. Update number 2. Thank goodness, the missing child is back. Based on my friend in the school, it doesn't appear that foul play is suspected, but I am waiting for that to be officially publicly confirmed. The next month, there was another update. Over the past few weeks, this family has started having fires on their dry lawn with no fire pit or visible safety precautions. The first couple times I called 911. The very first time because I thought a coal had leaped off a grill and caught the lawn on fire accidentally. And the following time because it spread so rapidly and looked so uncontainable and was so close to my house. But they've managed to put it out every time unassisted. But within a week of my tactically dropping the issue, I realized they weren't monitoring their young children around the fire. I had to dart out of my house when the youngest one almost fell face first into it, tripping over something, and corral the kids over to my place until the parents resurfaced. And yes, I confirmed, it's not the kids who were setting the fires, they were just around it. I called Child Protective Services after that incident. I was hesitant to do so because I thought maybe the fire was for finally cooking some food or warmth during the night and didn't want to discourage, survival type behaviors, but no. Over the last day or so, they've started carting a few hideous junker cars onto the property. Nothing wrong with that legally until one crossed over onto another neighbor's property line. They got so lucky that it was this particular neighbor because he's probably the most understanding of their situation of anyone on the street. He's one of the only people who hasn't stopped speaking to them and still brings over seasonally appropriate plants and warm jackets and other forms of assistance. This guy lived in a remote cabin for years. He's ex-military, major proponent of freedom to live your life however you want and knowing how to survive outdoors regardless of your geography. He only moved back to society to care for a sick relative. So I think to some degree, he envies this family. The neighborhood assumed they'd bought these junkers to fix up and sell for extra money. Not even extra money, just money, period. Because as far as I can tell, they don't otherwise work. The neighbors whose property they were on, let's call him Randy, went over and said that they couldn't have their foul-smelling broken car hanging onto his wife's neatly manicured lawn, but if they were trying to fix it up, he'd be happy to take a look at it in his well-equipped garage. They said they hadn't bought the cars to flip them, they'd bought them to sleep in them. So Randy asked the natural question we've all been wondering ourselves all along: why don't you sleep in your house? This is where things took a truly bizarre turn. They say they won't go into their house because it's haunted, and an evil spirit demon has been following them around place to place, but they can be rid of it if they don't go indoors, which is why they were living outside before. And cars don't count because cars don't have the warmth and aura of a home. The walking along the edge of the property they were doing, the fires they were starting, the fasting was all part of some sort of cleansing ritual. This created way more questions than it answered, but at least it clears up a few things, like we now know why they appear to know nothing about living off the land. So with this information, it's safe to assume that one or both of them is either taking some serious substances or is off a necessary medication. Even if you are someone who believes that this kind of possession can happen, you don't need a rocket science degree to see the obvious holes in their story. And regardless of your feelings on the supernatural, everyone can unite around not dragging kids into it. Randy told all of us neighbors who live nearby today, including us, about what they told him. He was conflicted about what to do because he doesn't believe the government should have been able to use their kids as a bargaining chip to get them to live a more conventional life. I think the level of paranoia they expressed worried even him enough that he hoped somebody would intervene for the kids' sake, but somebody other than him, so he wouldn't be forced to forsake his beliefs. When Randy shared this, some of the originally highly sympathetic parents said the reason they stopped hosting the family's kids was because they wouldn't stop freaking out their own kids talking about how they, quote, see spirits. Child Protective Services has been called again, the paramount reason not even being these latest revelations, but rather that the kids are not living in the house as they supposedly agreed. These people are not stable, physically or mentally. Meanwhile, there's another pretty fundamentalist outdoorsman they've connected with somewhere beyond the neighborhood. I think they might have known him before, who not only sees nothing wrong with them living outdoors in the yard of a perfectly fine house, but is also a staunch believer in the paranormal and is feeding their whatever this is by going along with their story and apparently ghost hunting with them. Hopefully, he'll tell them he got the ghost, so all this bizarreness will end. Still avoiding eye contact. I'm still super uncomfortable. I'm still locking my doors. I actually got a new, stronger lock. I'm hoping that this is as weird as things become, but I can't help but worry they'll get even more unstable, yet this will remain the low on the authorities' list. I'm lifting my moratorium on having the kids in my house. If I see anything iffy, I'll invite the kids right over. And here I thought the teenager in a heavy metal band was the worst neighbor I'd ever have. Fast forward a few months and there is another update. There had only been one other CPS visit since the one triggered by the last update, and by all accounts it was a routine compliance inspection. Things seemed like they had finally settled down. Nobody had to worry about the kids not being in school because summer kicked off. They looked like they were getting enough to eat, and whatever ghost hunting activities they participated in, the family kept to themselves. Then came the 4th of July. We have a few war veterans on the street. The system in the neighborhood has generally been if you plan to do fireworks at your home, you put out a lawn sign no later than 24 hours prior to stating when you'll be setting off the fireworks, so anyone with PTSD who may be affected can plan accordingly. No doubt Randy, the outdoorsy neighborhood who took the odd neighbors under his wing, explained this system because he is a vocal proponent of it, especially being a veteran himself. Yet still, apparently the fireworks really disturb them. There is never anything major, mostly just a few Roman candles and the equivalent. Our city actually has pretty strict firework laws as far as I'm aware, though I don't think my community pays much attention. I don't do home fireworks, so it's never been a concern for me, but the fireworks really threw them out of sorts. They complained the next day to anyone who would listen that the fireworks had, quote, disrupted the energy of their home. But again, at no point expressed this concern to anyone setting the fireworks off until the next day after they set them off, unless someone's leaving something out. Since then, they've been trying to build a fence around their property to keep the bad spirits out. These people know just as little about building as they did about gardening because it's been almost 3 weeks now and they barely have 5 total feet of fence lengthwise, and it's barely half a foot tall. I'm pretty sure they tried and failed to mix concrete. One of the neighbors works construction and offered to help them build a garden fence. They still have old cars and have amassed some other strange and foul-smelling junk, so he was happy to put a visual barrier between them and the rest of us. But he relayed his discussions with the family to my husband and explained that though he really wanted to reach out and help them, their plans for the fence were so out of touch with reality that he had to back away from the offer entirely. Now the family is building a mountain of what I would call trash, but they consider it a fence. It's becoming a real eyesore. Hopefully they'll get tired of this project soon. The good news is the kids are spending time inside. The parents seem to sleep outside. On the rare occasion they sleep at all. They're up most of the night working on the fence because it's too hot to do manual labor during the middle of the day. Some nights they sleep on the roof. I'm not even certain how they got up onto the roof, just the parents got up there, which is good. On the one hand, it's troubling that they leave the kids sleeping in the house alone at night. On the other hand, I prefer that to them taking the kids up on the roof or having them outside. I just hope they eventually move. So that brings us to one final update. The neighbor saga reached an abrupt and unfortunate ending earlier this week after a prolonged period of relative peace and quiet. We woke up to a hazmat team clearing the house in the first hours of the morning. By the time we went out to see what the commotion was, it was about 5:30 a.m. We still don't know why, but we're assuming it was some sort of substance lab situation. We've been assured their neighbors' properties were unharmed by whatever was going on. The children were removed from the parents' care the same day, and the house has been listed for sale. It's looking like the entire property will have to be demolished. Luckily, most of the houses in this neighborhood were built off a blueprint from a large regional developer, so reconstruction probably won't be too long or disruptive. I look forward to the neighborhood returning to normal, but also feel terrible for the kids and hope the best for them. This neighborhood has the most patient neighbors I have ever heard of. This family is doing all sorts of things that just wouldn't be tolerated by certain neighbors, but everyone in this neighborhood is so accommodating and trying to help them out and understand their beliefs. And then in the end, it was all a front. The spirits weren't real. It was just a giant front for a crystal blue situation. So were they cooking inside the house and that's why they couldn't be in there because they didn't want to smell the fumes or something? Or why would they still be outside? Or did they really believe the demons were real and this just happened to be a whole separate side thing? ending. I wish the ending to this had more details, as many details as the rest of it had, because this big conclusion is summed up in just 1 or 2 sentences. I guess by the way the original poster wrote this, it doesn't have to exactly be like it was a cooking operation, but people in hazmat suits to go into their house, for the parents to completely lose custody, and for the house to be demolished? Huh, that's a pretty good riddle. Give me your best explanation on what you think it could be if it's not a whole cooking operation inside that house. And as some people pointed out, if that is the explanation, maybe that's how they bought the house. Maybe that's why there's weird smells. Maybe that's why they're paranoid. Maybe that's why their situation before they moved into this house was living out in the woods because they wouldn't get caught cooking out there. And if that's the case, they're probably using too, because they specifically say that they never sleep. They're wandering around the house at all hours of the night, working on this trash fence in the middle of the night, and then just lying in the dirt with their eyes open. This is probably one of the stories that kept me the most spellbound from start to finish. I kept wondering what was going to happen next, and my curiosity wanted me to keep going further and further and further. I was thinking of theories of what this could all be the whole way through, and I'm sure you guys were too, so I would love to hear them. So leave all your thoughts down below, and also let me know what you would do if these were your neighbors. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories in this series, use the playlist at the top of the description. And next time you live stream, use the cream of the crop music. Search for Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever music platform you use for copyright-free music to use for your stream. It's free. Cream of the Stream. Either way, thanks a lot for listening. I'll see you guys next time.